you're glazing in general, it's a good idea to use very transparent colors when it comes to watercolor. So I was trying to decide on, what kind of palette I wanted to use on top of this particular camellia's image. And so I kind of came to the conclusion, I love naphthalimide maroon as a primary, but unfortunately it is semi-transparent. It's not a transparent color, but at this point, I'm still learning this process and what colors work best for it. So I settled on, okay, so any questions at all?
Yeah, Kris?
Yes.
What kind of paper do you use?
Usually 140 pound, depending on the size. If I'm working larger, 300 pound. I really love arches. I also use Fabriano, both cold press and hot press, but lately more cold press. Although I find that with 300 pound papers, hot press are really quite beautiful. There is a bit of texture to many of the brands, particularly it's impossible to get a smooth arches 300 pound hot press. There's quite a bit of texture. But let's see. Lately I have been using Winsor and Newton paper and really enjoy that. It's a little more absorbent than, say, arches. Arches can be you really need to scrub it almost to get the pigment down on the paper. And a lot of times you can just wet it and let it dry, and that'll kind of remove some of the starch or whatever it is, the gel that they put on it. Okay, so I had this I was playing with salt and thought, well, I'll just start experimenting with some negative positive. And as you can see, I've started pulling out images. Now, I'll work from a photo, say for a very base image, and then just look, once I start adding layers, I'll look at the photo less frequently and it just becomes its own animal. So this will have a very different look than, say, this. And these are experiments, always experiments. So I will start painting and show you. Let me see. So I will do the reveal here. And I kind of worked on this last night, where I'm just starting to pull images, leaf type images out of this background. And it's all winging it, which is what I really love doing. I really do not enjoy the whole, I've illustrated for so many years that it's not a real deep pleasure for me to really plan a piece. I kind of like to fly by the seat of my pants when I'm painting and learning. So in this case, I did start with the underpainting, just suggesting some leaf shapes here. And as you can see in this area, any questions or thoughts? Does anybody have any thoughts on negative painting and at all, their experiences of doing it?
One of the concepts that you just brought out that I'm going to find useful is to pull out images from the background, which was something I kind of enjoyed playing with, but I didn't realize it was an actual thing.
I'm going to use Notanizer. That really sounds very helpful.
It is a wonderful app. Okay, so I'm just going to start painting here. I've got a little leftover naphthol. Oh, actually, I changed my mind. I decided to go with Rose of Ultramarine. It is a transparent color, well, mix. It's a convenience mix of Quin Rose and Ultramarine. And I'm just gonna start getting some colors going here. Now, just the thought about negative painting in general, one thing I've noticed when I see tutorials is that you're not, basically you're working light to dark. And I like to mix it up a bit. I don't work quite like that. I like to get some values going.
Do you always paint horizontally? I mean, is your paper horizontal, flat?
No, lots of times I'll paint on a vertical, I'll paint vertically depending on, what kind of effect I'm looking for in the watercolor. If I'm using, say, a granulating color, I want, like a sense of falling pigment or whatever, then I'll go more vertical. It just really depends on what I'm doing. In this case, I don't want a whole lot of vertical movement. I don't want any vertical movement in the pigment. So I'm just kind of thinking about how I ultimately want this to. And I soften edges a lot and with this technique. And I'm thinking about the play of negative and positive. And it just kind of seems to happen on its own. Some books I do recommend are, if you want to explore negative and positive shapes, is this book, which I really like, is just Notan, the Dark and Light Principle of Design. There's some real neat exercises in it where you're doing some paper cutouts, which I think is also really helpful just in playing with design.
Kris,
Yes.
that style of painting, you have to be so intentional. You have to know what you're doing, and your brushstroke has to be perfect because it doesn't allow for any wiping off or scrubbing out. Am I right?
I think that, I have, yeah, this is a very direct, a kind of a hard edge, kind of painting, I guess.
Mhm.
I think scrubbing makes for a very soft,
Mhm.
quality. And I tend to like the, when you put watercolor down, I like the ring it makes, the hard edge that it makes, the way the pigment collects and dries at the very edge of uh, the wash.
Those leaves on the right are a perfect example of painting with negative space.
Oh, right here?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
The neat thing about doing this kind of or just playing with, an image like this is you can get down into teeny little negative areas.
How many different sizes of brush do you use? Like on something like that?
This is a 10 and it's a synthetic, I think it's a synthetic sable mix. I love these brushes, and I have a variety in this. But I would say a 10, this 10 I get a lot of use out of for this kind of painting. These are also really good for it. Has a really nice point. And for this kind of thing, I feel like I really need a good solid or a nice sharp point. And I'm really trying to consider movement, how I want the leaves to go. And I think one of the artists that I really like that really utilizes negative painting is Sargent in his watercolors. So you might take a look at his watercolor work. I think his use of light and dark is beautiful.
So how many different colors are you using in that?
I'm using Rose of Ultramarine, quinacridone gold, and phthalo blue, or a little bit of phthalo blue on occasion. In this area, I want a little more blue cast. Viridian, not viridian, phthalo green is my green color. And I'm also throwing in a little occasional carmine.
You really don't need a lot of colors, do you?
No, and I think it really helps to limit the palette, especially when you're doing a lot of glazing. You want to be careful not to get too many opaque colors layered on each other. I tend to have like a ginormous palette of colors, and really it's overwhelming. So this is kind of a random thing. Just kind of building. Ooh. It's kind of a meditative process.
It should be meditative if you know what you're doing. If you don't, it's pretty stressful.
I think it's helpful to make everything an experiment. It's just not real serious in the sense of doing a final piece of artwork. As a result, I never finish any artwork.
That's a good thing to keep in mind, absolutely. Otherwise, you just get too stressed out.
Yes, I definitely do. Getting my wrist in this.
You always have to be careful not to do too much, don't you?
Yeah, at this point, it's when you're putting your initial underpainting down, I I think, you can put as much paint, pull as much paint off as you want while it's wet. Um, but yeah, as you start layering, you want to be more careful about it.
It's stunning.
Oh, gee, thank you.
It is.
At this point, it's kind of fun, um, because then you can start playing with the edges and losing some. Like there's some areas that I want to just keep very vague and other areas defined. So now I'm starting to think about where I want darks.
That white space with the yellow leaf down where you're on the bottom left where your hand was, when you had it turned upside down, it really gave me a feeling of where the light was coming from,
Mm,
right? It was just like a spotlight was right there and it was shining on the center of the flower.
that's a great point. I think that's something, well, definitely to consider while you're painting is that sense of light. Let me know when you've seen enough.
Well, it looks great to me. What did they used to say? Please step away from the painting.
There you go. I think that's time.
Okay.
So yes, probably overdone.
No.
Fine.
It was a lot of fun.
Fun for us too.
Very therapeutic.
It's a great way. Now, I haven't looked at very many YouTube videos, but so this is probably similar to that, but having it personal is even better.
Yeah.
It's just so easy to see what you do.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes.
There's such lovely movement in
Oh,
the
yeah.
piece.
Oh, hey, thank you. It was really a pleasure to do this. And thanks you guys for inviting me.